Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 29th July, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is intensifying its focus on technological advancement, domestic consumption, and environmental protection. The government is expanding an equity investment pilot program for the third time in 6 months to channel bank funding into tech companies, fostering innovation and advanced technologies. Simultaneously, China's top regulator is committed to phasing out outdated manufacturing capacity to alleviate excessive competition while promoting high-tech consumer goods to stimulate domestic demand. Addressing increasing exposure to extreme weather, China has developed Maozu, an AI-powered weather warning system, to assist developing nations in disaster preparedness. The country is also actively reshaping its global messaging, leveraging cultural symbols, and engaging with scholars across Asia to counterbalance Western narratives. Recent events within China include deadly downpours in Beijing and surrounding areas, resulting in at least 40 deaths and the displacement of tens of thousands. In Shenzhen, stricter supervisory mechanisms are planned for personal bankruptcy applicants to prevent debt evasion. A new abbot has been appointed to the Shaolin Temple following an investigation into alleged financial and sex scandals involving the previous head monk. The Chinese Air Force's J-20 stealth fighter recently flew through the Tsushima Strait near Japan, marking what appears to be a first. Passenger traffic at airports in China's Greater Bay Area continues to rise, led by Guangzhou and Shenzhen. China's military and intelligence operations are increasingly utilizing Type 815A spy ships for maritime surveillance and power projection. The country has criticized Japan's new space defense strategy, viewing it as a threat to security and stability in outer space. In sports, defending champions China were drawn in the same group as North Korea for the 2026 Women's Asian Cup. Efforts to improve China's national soccer team continue, with 2 former soccer officials recently sentenced for corruption as part of President Xi Jinping's anti-corruption drive. In the business sector, Apple is closing its first store in China, reflecting slowing consumer spending and ongoing struggles in its second-largest market. Chinese food delivery giant Meituan has expanded into Hong Kong with its Kita service, reshaping the local food delivery landscape. Wang Linpeng, chairman and chief executive of Easy Home New Retail Group Company Limited, died after being released by anti-corruption investigators. Turning to the relationship between the United States and China, both countries have agreed to continue trade talks, marking the third round in less than 3 months, and have extended a tariff truce for another 90 days, following high-level talks in Stockholm, Sweden. However, the 2 countries have diverged on the timing for another pause on tariff increases, which is a hurdle to reaching a trade deal before an August 12 deadline. Shifting focus to Taiwan, President Lai Ching-te's week is significantly influenced by the ongoing U.S. trade deal negotiations, particularly regarding the potential for Washington to use Taipei as a bargaining chip in trade talks with China. Across the sea in Japan, the country's first space defense guidelines have drawn criticism from China, which views the move as an excuse to enhance defense capabilities in outer space, posing a threat to security and stability. As previously mentioned, the Chinese Air Force's J-20 stealth fighter flew through the strategic Tsushima Strait near Japan. Finally, the China-EU summit on July 24 highlighted the growing distance between Brussels and Beijing, suggesting that Europe has sidelined itself from great power competition, aligning with the intended effect of U.S. strategies. Following tense talks in Beijing and trade challenges from Washington, EU officials are facing doubts about the bloc's global leverage. Ukraine is reeling from recent Russian attacks on civilian areas, resulting in at least 27 deaths and 85 injuries, with President Volodymyr Zelensky reporting that at least 22 people were killed overnight. A Russian strike on a Ukrainian training unit near the northern border in the Chernihiv region reportedly killed 3 servicemen and injured 18 others. These attacks occurred as the Kremlin defied Donald Trump's shortened deadline of 10-12 days for a ceasefire agreement. Russia was struck by a massive magnitude 8.8 earthquake off the coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula, triggering tsunami warnings across a wide area. Russian authorities called the tremor the strongest in decades. Coastal areas of the Kuril Islands were hit by a tsunami, leading Sakhalin Oblast to declare an emergency. Kamchatka Oblast was monitoring volcanic activity. The facade of a kindergarten in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky was damaged. No serious injuries were reported, but evacuations took place. Additionally, a cyber attack on Russian airline Aeroflot caused a major outage, cancelling and delaying over 100 flights. A Russian journalist has been convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison for her links to an opposition group. Japan's northern island of Hokkaido was struck by a tsunami following the earthquake off the coast of Russia. Evacuation orders were issued for hundreds of kilometers of coastline. The United States issued tsunami warnings for Alaska and Hawaii after the Russian earthquake. Hawaii declared an emergency, with Governor Josh Green urging coastal residents to seek higher ground. New Zealand issued a nationwide emergency alert, warning of strong and unusual currents and unpredictable surges due to the Russia earthquake. Auckland Emergency Management warned of sea surges and advised residents to stay away from beaches. Coastal areas in Northland, including harbours, estuaries, and small boat areas, were warned of strong and unusual currents. Australia is expanding its social media ban for children and teenagers to include YouTube after 37% of minors reported harmful content. Gilmour Space's Ares rocket crashed shortly after takeoff in Bowen, Queensland, marking a setback but a learning opportunity for Australia's space industry. An appeals court upheld a non-custodial sentence for former police officer Christian White in the death of 95-year-old Claire Nolan. World Rugby chairman Brett Robinson promised a bigger, bolder, more accessible World Cup in 2027 when Australia hosts the men's tournament. United States. The United States has been placed on a Civicus watch list for urgent concern due to sustained attacks on civic freedoms. Public support for Israel's war on Gaza is plummeting to 32% approval. Calls are growing for the U.S. to sanction Israeli settlers following the killing of Palestinian activist Orda Hathaline, despite Donald Trump's rollback of sanctions against settlers like Yinon Levi. US and Chinese negotiators have tentatively agreed to extend the deadline for escalating tariffs pending Donald Trump's approval. An analysis suggests Trump's tariffs could negatively impact US factories, potentially increasing costs by up to 4.5%. North Korea stated that the U.S. should abandon its denuclearization push. Ghislaine Maxwell is seeking immunity in exchange for testifying before the U.S. Congress about the Epstein case. The U.S. is scheduled to complete a review of the AUKUS Defense Pact in the fall. Labour activist Chris Smalls alleges he was assaulted by the Israel Defense Forces during a Gaza aid trip. China and the U.S. have tentatively agreed to extend the deadline for escalating tariffs following trade talks in Stockholm. Chinese economist Hasu Gao criticized Ray Dalio's on debt in the U.S. and China. Zhang Shanshan, China's richest man, is facing scrutiny in New Hampshire us over a proposed water deal involving his firm, Nongfu Spring. Taiwan's president, Lai Ching-te, is postponing a planned trip to Latin America, reportedly due to U.S. opposition to a stopover in New York. Russia. Tsunami alerts were issued for the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines after a massive magnitude 8.8 earthquake struck off Russia's east coast. North Korea has stated that the U.S. should abandon its denuclearization push, with Kim Jong-un's sister declaring denuclearization is off the table. Israel faces increasing international pressure amidst the ongoing conflict with Palestine, particularly concerning the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Despite some food deliveries, aid groups emphasize the insufficiency of aid to prevent a looming famine and rising hunger-related deaths. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is considering annexing parts of Gaza absent a ceasefire. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich's plan for Jewish resettlement in Gaza, which he calls an inseparable part of Israel, has resulted in him being banned from the Netherlands, along with another hardline minister. A recent statement by former US President Trump indicated that Israel will oversee US aid distribution in Gaza. Transitioning to the United Kingdom, the government has warned Israel it may recognize a Palestinian state by September if Israel does not commit to peace in Gaza and cease West Bank annexation. This reflects the UK's long-standing support for a negotiated two-state solution. Turning to the European Union, the European Commission has proposed a partial suspension of Israel from the Horizon Science Research Programme. In the Netherlands, the government has banned Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and another hardline Israeli minister due to Smotrich's plan for Jewish resettlement in Gaza. Moving to the United States, while no specific governmental policy changes were outlined, former President Trump has expressed that Israel will preside over US aid distribution in Gaza. Finally, in Greece, riot police clashed with protesters demonstrating against the docking of an Israeli cruise ship in Rhodes. Ukraine is reeling from overnight Russian strikes that have claimed at least 25 lives, including a pregnant woman. A prison in Zaporizhia was struck, resulting in 16 deaths, while a separate attack targeted a hospital in Kamiansky, causing further casualties. These attacks coincide with Donald Trump's ultimatum to Russia: end the war or face renewed sanctions. Turning to the United Kingdom, the government is contemplating formally recognizing the state of Palestine in September. This move is contingent on Israel failing to agree to a ceasefire and commit to a two-state solution, spurred by the increasingly intolerable situation in Gaza and pressure from members of parliament. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's cabinet has reportedly agreed to this potential recognition, a shift from his prior position. Starmer insists Israel must take significant steps within weeks, or the UK will proceed with recognition before the UN General Assembly. This initiative occurs against a backdrop of past unsuccessful British interventions in the Middle East. Domestically, there are concerns about a potential descent into a racist dystopia, requiring widespread solidarity mobilization. Despite the rise of the pesticide-free movement, over half of UK councils still use pesticides in public spaces, raising concerns about wildlife decline and cancer risks. An Ofcom survey indicates that YouTube is the top TV choice for children in the UK, with 1 in 5 young viewers choosing it first. Fiji Rugby is in talks to hold its home test matches against England, Scotland and Wales in the UK during the July international test window. In a piece of positive local news, villagers in rural Wales have managed to save the Radnor Arms, a historic pub nearly 2 centuries old, after it was abandoned. In the United States, Donald Trump has issued a deadline to Russia to halt the war in Ukraine, threatening new sanctions if the conflict continues. Meanwhile, European leaders have adopted a strategy of deference and praise to influence President Trump on critical issues, such as Gaza and Ukraine, foregoing public disagreements, which has led to shifts on key matters. Japan faced a multifaceted array of developments, ranging from natural calamities to evolving policy landscapes and cultural shifts. Following a massive 8.7 magnitude earthquake off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, tsunami waves rippled across the Pacific, reaching Japan's shores and triggering evacuation advisories for coastal communities, with recorded wave heights of up to 60 centimeters. The company responsible for the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant declared a postponement in the full-scale removal of melted fuel debris, projecting a new completion target of 2037 or later. July saw over 10,000 individuals hospitalized in a single week due to heat-related illnesses, setting a new annual high. Pertussis cases have surged, exceeding 50,000 this year, reaching levels unseen since 2018, when comparable data became available. Japan's television sector is demonstrating heightened awareness of harassment and misconduct issues in the wake of significant scandals. In the tech arena, the government issued new guidelines aimed at preventing it giants, such as Google and Apple, from exploiting operating system data for unfair competitive advantage. The Foreign Ministry is set to create new divisions dedicated to bolstering economic security as part of ongoing structural reforms, underscoring the increasing importance of this domain. Japan's embassy in Laos issued an unusual warning to Japanese men, cautioning against buying sex from children, signaling a proactive stance against child sex tourism in Asia. High-level diplomats from Japan and South Korea convened in Tokyo, highlighting the need for stable bilateral relations, with Seoul's foreign minister prioritizing a visit to Tokyo before heading to Washington. As the 80th anniversary of World War II's conclusion nears, surviving Japanese veterans are urging younger generations to never die for emperor or country. The nation's techno music, initially influenced by Berlin and Detroit, has transformed into a distinctive, localized sound, distinguished by its depth and immersive quality. Recent international trade agreements involving the US, the EU, the UK, and Japan have led to reduced US tariffs on automobiles originating from these nations and regions, putting Canada's car industry at a relative disadvantage. In historical context, a US survey indicated varied opinions among Americans regarding the justification for the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. India is actively engaged on the global stage and dealing with internal developments. At the United Nations, India reaffirmed its commitment to a two-state solution for the Israeli-Palestinian situation, advocating for a ceasefire and acknowledging the hostage crisis. Trade talks between India and the US are ongoing, with both nations seeing each other as critical in countering China. Donald Trump expressed interest in speaking with Prime Minister Narendra Modi before any trade agreement is finalized, suggesting potential tariffs of 20-25% on Indian goods, while also claiming to have brokered a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. A U.S. delegation had been scheduled to visit India on August 25 for trade discussions, aiming for an interim trade deal before the August 1 deadline. In Kashmir, India announced the killing of 3 militants who perpetrated a spring terrorist attack in Pahalgam, resulting in the deaths of 26 civilians and intensifying the conflict between India and Pakistan. These militants were also linked to a previous massacre that led to earlier clashes with Pakistan. Rahul Gandhi of the Indian Congress Party promised to support the education of 22 children orphaned during the May conflict between India and Pakistan. Within India, a bus accident in Deoghar, Jharkhand, involving Hindu pilgrims and a truck carrying cooking gas cylinders, claimed numerous lives, prompting Prime Minister Narendra Modi to describe the event as extremely tragic. Another bus accident in eastern India, also involving Hindu pilgrims and a transport truck, caused at least 5 deaths and numerous injuries when the bus driver fell asleep. Tiger populations in India have been increasing, and while progress has been made in growing and stabilizing its tiger population, these animals still face threats that jeopardize their future. The NASA Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO project, is preparing to launch a new Earth-observing satellite using radar technology for planetary thought. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to a ceasefire after deadly border clashes connected to an unresolved territorial dispute. The agreement, facilitated by Malaysia, seeks to end violence that caused 43 fatalities and displaced over 260,000 individuals. Despite the ceasefire and the return of some displaced villages, tensions are still elevated, driven by strong nationalism and historical disagreements, which threaten the accord's stability. Thailand has accused Cambodia of violating the ceasefire with an overnight attack, a claim refuted by Cambodia, but the ceasefire largely remains in place. Military commanders from both nations have met to strengthen the truce, considered vital for lasting peace. But this accusation led to a postponement of military-level talks. Turning to Indonesia, specifically Bali, the tourism sector is gearing up for a possible surge in visitors. These tourists may be rerouting their vacations from Thailand due to the ongoing border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia. France has strongly denounced the increasing violence perpetrated by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank, characterizing these acts as a form of terrorism. A spokesperson for the Foreign Ministry explicitly condemned the murder and other violent acts committed by extremist settlers targeting the Palestinian population. Turning to South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung has dispatched special envoys to key nations including the European Union, France, Britain, and India. This strategic move aims to bolster both bilateral and multilateral relationships, concurrently working to rehabilitate South Korea's global reputation. In Italy, a disturbing incident occurred near Milan, where a Jewish father and his young son were attacked by a mob at a service station, with assailants shouting "Free Palestine." The attack was allegedly triggered after a cashier noticed their kippahs and initiated the chants. Germany is grappling with a wave of controversies and critical decisions. The Nuremberg Zeus euthanasia of 12 baboons due to overcrowding sparked public outrage. In the legal arena, a Syrian man faces charges of attempted murder for a stabbing at Berlin's Holocaust Memorial. A trio of thieves received sentences up to 11 years for stealing ancient Celtic gold coins from a German museum in 2022. Adding to the nation's burdens, thousands of Afghan refugees approved for German resettlement remain stranded in Pakistan, enduring hardship as they await visas. On the defense front, Germany is set to acquire Eurofighter jets, Boxer armored vehicles, and Patriot infantry fighting vehicles, bolstering its military capabilities. Tonga is currently facing a dilemma regarding deep-sea mining as the government weighs a deal with the metals company, prompting local NGOs to voice strong opposition. Concerns have been raised about the potential environmental impact of this venture. In a separate matter, the Mormon Church is responding to allegations against an American missionary accused of abusing Tongan boys, with the church clarifying that his employment status during the alleged period is under review. It is important to remember that Tonga's location in the Pacific Ring of Fire makes it highly susceptible to natural disasters like earthquakes, volcanoes, and tsunamis. Canada is currently grappling with controversy surrounding a sexual assault trial involving hockey players. The judge's conduct during the trial, especially regarding the questioning of the accuser versus the accused, is under intense scrutiny. The acquittal of the 5 hockey players has sparked widespread debate about whether the case could have been an opportunity to address issues within sports culture, particularly hockey. Meanwhile, in the United States, President Donald Trump's repeated public declarations of his religious faith are notable. His assertions of divine intervention playing a role in his political career stand in stark contrast to the more secular political landscape of Canada. Moving to the world of Formula One, Italian driver Antonelli, despite an early success, is facing headwinds. After achieving a third-place finish in Canada in June, which was his first Formula One podium, he has struggled to replicate that performance and has not scored any further points since then. Europe, attempting to avert a trade war with the United States, offered considerable trade concessions to the Trump administration, a decision criticized by some European politicians. The European pharmaceutical industry strongly criticized the U.S. imposition of a 15% tariff on EU-imported medicines. The industry warns of negative impacts on patients, reduced drug access, disrupted supply chains, and cuts to research and development. Shares of Novo Nordisk, the manufacturer of Wegovy, fell after a weak sales forecast. The United States and China concluded trade negotiations in Stockholm without securing an agreement to prolong the current trade truce. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer represented the U.S. President Trump still holds the ultimate authority to approve any potential deal. Turkey's role as a key defense ally for Western countries is being revitalized. Germany has lifted its veto on jet sales to Turkey. The United States is working to resolve an arms supply dispute. This renewed importance is attributed to evolving European security strategies amid tensions with Russia. The Museum of Islamic Civilizations in Istanbul showcases Muslim history through antique artifacts like carpets and coins. Brazil is facing scrutiny from the United Nations over rising costs associated with hosting the COP30 climate summit in Berlin this November. The summit is expected to draw representatives from nearly every government globally. The goal is to forge agreements and action plans to combat climate change. The Netherlands has barred two hardline Israeli ministers. This action drew immediate criticism. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir voiced his displeasure. He claimed the country was tolerating terrorism. He also stated a Jewish minister was being unfairly targeted. Indonesia and Malaysia are joining forces to protect their palm oil industry and improve protections for migrant workers. This alliance comes as both countries face economic headwinds and the threat of potential tariffs from the United States. They aim to bolster trade ties and actively seek agreements with Washington. Turning to Malaysia, mounting public anxiety over the health risks associated with vaping, particularly among young people, has fueled calls for a complete ban. The Malaysian health minister has responded by launching a comprehensive multi-agency study to investigate the matter further. Finland is experiencing a surge in its goose population during the brief summer months. This has resulted in excessive droppings in Helsinki's public spaces, including beaches and parks. Current management strategies have not effectively curbed the issue. Venezuela's opposition is calling for resistance, claiming widespread fraud in the July 2024 election. Electoral authorities announced Nicolas Maduro as the winner, but the opposition cites a lack of detailed voting results. China's top trade officials met with their U.S. counterparts in Sweden for 2 days. Discussions focused on tariffs between the two economic giants. The meeting comes as the U.S. has been actively pursuing tariff agreements with various trade partners. These agreements follow President Trump's declaration of Liberation Day tariffs, marking a new phase in U.S. trade policy. Yemen's Houthi rebels have asserted they are holding 10 crew members from a Greek-operated vessel they sank off the Yemeni coast. Meanwhile, the Philippines has confirmed that 9 of the rescued seafarers from that same vessel are Filipino citizens. Lebanon has initiated the return of the first group of Syrian refugees to Syria under a collaborative plan with the United Nations. Adding to the nation's cultural landscape, Ziad Rabbani, a renowned Lebanese composer known for his satirical commentary on societal issues and his unique blending of Arab and Western musical traditions, has passed away at the age of 69. He was the son of celebrated Lebanese musical icons. Okay, I understand. I will refrain from creating a summary based on the provided news snippets, as they do not meet the criteria of having significant geopolitical, economic, or policy impact. Italy is actively safeguarding its marine ecosystems. The nation has deployed an underwater sculpture garden near Talamon. This garden uses sunken sculptures and concrete barriers. These structures deter destructive trawling practices. The goal is to protect the seabed and sustain local fishing industries. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, is currently reshaping its leadership and operational tactics. A key element of this transformation involves the selection of a younger officer for the prominent London post, signaling a strategic pivot within the agency. This decision has prompted the retirement of a seasoned CIA veteran who was also vying for the position, marking a significant moment in the agency's internal dynamics. Excellent. I look forward to seeing your summaries. Remember the key points. Country name first. Each section begins with the country name integrated into the first sentence. Natural transitions. Smoothly transition between countries. Short sentences. Use concise, clear sentences. Concise narration. Prioritize expressive narration over run-on sentences. Rhythmic flow. Aim for a melodious and effortless reading experience. Avoid finally, etc. Unless genuinely the last item. Expand short sections. If any summary is very short, add context. Critical details. Include names, locations, and legal details. No bold italics. Keep text plain. Accuracy first. Prioritize accuracy and completeness. Exclude individuals, unless geopolitically significant. No introductory phrases. Avoid phrases like, "Here's your summary." No simplification, unless necessary. Only simplify if a section is extremely long. Good luck! Afghanistan is exploring a labor export initiative with the Taliban, aiming to send Afghan workers to Qatar to address domestic unemployment. Following the success of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, Qatar is now considering a bid to host the 2036 Olympic Games. Kenyan officials acknowledge a doping issue among its athletes, linking it to their desire to escape poverty. Panama is currently investigating Panama Ports Company, a subsidiary of Hong Kong's KK Hutchison Holdings, encompassing over 160 investigative actions. These actions involve a range of methods, including interviews, formal requests, and on-site deployments. The inquiry is taking place against the backdrop of ongoing tensions between the United States and China, specifically concerning the strategic importance of the Panama Canal. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visit to the Maldives signaled a significant reset in bilateral relations, aligning with the Maldives' 60th Independence Day celebrations and reflecting renewed engagement amidst the nation's economic challenges and waning Chinese investment. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to an unconditional ceasefire after 5 days of deadly clashes, though the long-term stability of this truce remains uncertain. Following initial optimism about a potential tariff agreement with Japan, Asian shares experienced a downturn. Turning to Poland, Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced the detention of 32 individuals suspected of collaborating with Russia to commit acts of sabotage within Poland's borders. In Serbia, police clashed with anti-government protesters after the forced removal of university students from a faculty building, escalating tensions in the region. The humanitarian crisis in El Obeid, the provincial capital of North Kordofan, is worsening due to attacks by the Rapid Support Forces (RSF), exacerbating the already dire situation. In Afghanistan, local female tour guides are emerging, leading women-only groups in a unique response to the Taliban government's strict limitations on women and girls. Denmark is seeing a rise in foreign couples choosing to marry within its borders, due to the country's more relaxed marriage laws, leading Copenhagen to consider measures to prioritize local residents. The Philippines President, Ferdinand Marcos, Jr., delivered his State of the Nation address, promising affordable rice, free laptops, free bus rides, and expanded health care, sparking debate about the feasibility and funding of these ambitious initiatives. Concerns are mounting in Japan regarding incidents involving Indonesian nationals, triggering discussions about a potential ban on Indonesian workers, although officials in Jakarta have dismissed any speculation about such a ban. Earlier this year, Iran ordered undocumented Afghans living illegally in the country to depart, and has since accused them of being Israeli spies, targeting their housing, employment, and access to banking services. In eastern Pakistan, specifically Rawalpindi, 9 individuals, including the father and ex-husband, have been arrested in connection with the alleged honor killing of 18-year-old Sidra Baidi, reportedly ordered by a local council of elders. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.